Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. This is the second part on our production phase. The production phase is the first thing that happens during your turn. And so I wanted to make this video separate from the others because I thought that the technology deserved a separate video. So this is the technology research. There's 13 different technologies, and I want to go through all of them, and that's why I wanted to make this a separate video, so we can talk about each one of them just a little bit, right? And who they might help, who they might not help. I just, even back in, when I first got my very first Axis and Allies game back in, I believe it was 1984, they had research and technology in that game, and we used to roll at the start of the game to get the technology, because I love having the advanced weapons in a game. And one of the things I love about this game is that it's doable. In Global 40, it's ridiculous how it's researched. It's just you might as well, like, it's a waste of space in the rule book in that game. But this game, it's done very, very well. I love the way they've done it. Your rolls aren't wasted, your money's not wasted, and you actually get to try for the technologies that you want. Like in the other game there, you just, like, you roll the dice and maybe you get it, and then if you do, then you roll the dice again. Oh wow, I just got a technology that I can't possibly use, like, it's just ridiculous, right? So this one here, you actually pick the one that you want, and then you try to roll the dice to see if you can get it, right? And that's what I really like about this one. Plus the technologies are good, most of them. Some of them are better than others, obviously. Some of them are better than others for specific nations. But anyway, let's get to it. So what happens is, like, you're looking at the chart right here, and you can see all the different technologies, and I'm not going to list them right now because I'm about to list them one at a time. So you can see them all. There's 13 of them. And what happens is you will pay 2 IPP. This is on the very first turn, right? The development, when you're purchasing units and paying down damage. Probably what you'll want to do before you purchase units and pay down your damage is, if you're going to do some research, do the research first. Because if you manage to get a weapon, then you get to use it right away. Like, you don't have to wait until next turn or anything like that. Like, if you've developed a weapon, you can buy it right now and put it on at the end of your turn, right? So how it works is you pay that 2 IPP, and then you roll the dice. And it's a 12-sided dice. So you take a look here. Advanced artillery. So if you roll a 7 or up or greater, then you get to put your little roundel right there. Let's say it's Germany, so Germany puts it right there. And then they can do as many rolls as they want on a turn, provided, like, they got to pay $2 for each one, but they can't do 2 on the same one. Like, they wouldn't be able to roll again for advanced artillery on this turn. So they could roll for advanced artillery. Let me just grab some more roundels here. And then they could roll for advanced mechanized. And you can see Germany's already got advanced mechanized on the first one here. So if they wanted to roll for advanced mechanized, then they would be trying to get it on the second spot here. So let's say they roll the dice again, and this time they get a 9. Well, there you go. They've done better than a 7, so they get to put their roundel there. And then it just keeps progressing along there, right? So next turn, you try to do advanced mechanized again, and if you get it, a 7 or greater, then it goes over there. And again, if you get a 7 or greater, and it might take you 3 tries to get it, you know what I mean? Like, you might roll a 3 or a 5 or something, and oh, damn, so next turn you try it again, right? And the turn after that, until you get it to the end over here. Once it's at the end, then Germany has developed advanced mechanized technology. And it's the same with all of the technologies, and they're not all worth the same. Like, you see, these are 7, is 8 for heavy armor, because heavy armor is a really powerful weapon, right? Jet aircraft, again, you got to roll 8s. Heavy bombers, you got to roll 9s, and then the last one is an 8. The last one over here is an 8. Long-range aircraft, they're all 7s. Advanced submarines are all 8s. Down in strategic rockets are all 9s, and I don't know why, because that's one of the weapons that I'm just not a big fan of. Like, it would be good if it was slightly different than what it is, but it's not. And then the rest of them are all 7s down here, and there's some good weapons down at the bottom here as well. So anyway, that's how you do it. You pay the 2, and then you say, okay, I'm going to try to roll for heavy armor. And then you just, like here, let's just show you here. So you take your 12-sided dice, and you need an 8 or more, so you pay $2, and then 9. So there you go. The Germany just got a pie on that one. So it goes over to here on heavy armor, right? So we're halfway to getting heavy armor already. And the reason some of them start with it on there was because they were good at that back in the war. Like, Germany was pretty good at building heavy armor, so they're giving them a leg up. The Germans and the Russians were the 2 prominent heavy armor nations in World War II, and so that's why they both start with 1 on there, you know, and they were pretty good at building jet aircrafts. The Americans were really good with bombers, so they put them on there. Radar, the British were the ones that developed radar, so they get 1 on radar already. So that's how it works. Okay, so let's talk about the specific weapons, and we'll just start at the top, and we'll work our way down. So the first one is advanced artillery, and the other thing is you're going to want to have sculpts that represent those things as well, or something to differentiate your sculpts. Like here, the artillery there. This is an artillery piece for the Germans, and this is your typical Axis and Allies one from Europe 1940, right? So that's what I'm using for artillery for the Germans. Now, if you didn't have another artillery sculpt, what you could do is just get yourself a colored chip, like any color, and say, okay, these are going to be the advanced weapons if I put them on a green chip. So there you go. Now that's advanced artillery. And you have to be able to differentiate, because all of the artillery that's on the board already for the Germans before this happens, before they manage to get their roundel all the way over to the end here, those are still regular artillery, right? It's now when you buy one, now it's going to be kicked up artillery. Now it's going to be that. So myself, like, I was fortunate enough to have a bit of money when I put this game together. So instead of doing it like this, I've got myself sculpts for just about everything, just about for all the nations and all the ones that I need. And this is the one here. This is the Morser gun here. Morser artillery, German. So this is what I'm going to use if they get if they manage to develop advanced artillery. So let me just grab something else here, and I'll show you what the difference is. So regular artillery, we've talked about artillery already in a previous video when we went through all the units. So regular artillery is attacks at 3, defends at 3, it moves 1, and the cost is 4, right? In this one here, like if you manage to get advanced artillery technology, then what happens is it's going to do exactly the same thing. It's going to be first strike like it was and everything. The difference is it's going to attack and defend at 4, and that's a big difference. So advanced artillery is pretty good for just about any nation on the board, because remember, your artillery is first strike, so that's good. Your artillery upscales one of your infantry class units, and now if you've got advanced artillery, well, that's at 4 or less. That now your artillery is really worth something, right? So that's a good one for any nation to have. And I find that all of the ground units for any of the nations are good to have. Is some of the ones that don't work so well are, you know, like radar. Like what is the Americans going to do with radar? Because radar is where your factories are, and America's factories don't necessarily come under attack, right? So you know, it's kind of a weird game if that happens, and so that's not going to be very useful for them. But they could certainly use artillery, even though, you know, they can use something for their ships even more. Artillery would work for them as well, but it's definitely going to work for the Germans and the Russians and anybody else that's slogging it out on the ground, right? Where they're starting on this the main continent, like Eurasia, I call it. That's Europe and Asia stuck together, and you know. Africa, like you can move by ground down to there, although not as easily in this game. But yeah, any type of ground unit is great. So advanced artillery is really good. So that's the first one, and that one I would recommend for anybody. The next one is advanced mechanized, and advanced mechanized is really good as well. Like your mechanized, we've been over this before too. This mechanized is something that can blitz with your medium armor in this game, remember, and blitzing it is different in this game. So you can attack something, and if you manage to take it out in 3 rounds or less, then you can keep going, but not with everybody, just with your medium tanks and with your mechanized infantry that's paired 1-to-1 with a tank, right? So these guys can keep going on to the next territory. So you've gotten in behind the front lines and you're attacking, and plus you could bring your fighters and tactical bombers in, and that's pretty devastating. That's a really good way to play this game. Is like mechanized infantry are really important in this game, right? So now your mechanized infantry, normally in this game, like you said, you pair it 1-to-1, so they attack at 3 and they defend at 4, right? They move 2 spaces, and they cost 4 IPCs, and that's really good already. But if you manage to develop advanced mechanized technology, what happens then is it gives you +1 on attack and defense. So now they're going to attack at 4 and defend at 5, and not only that, but they can pair 2-to-1 with your tanks. So this is what I'm using for advanced mechanized, because again, like the artillery, you're going to want to differentiate with them. And I'm using this sculpt here for my German ones. Look, I've got different sculpts for all of them. But this is the mechanized infantry from the America game, right? So now when I go to blitz with the Germans here, I can pair 2 mechanized infantry with 1 tank, and the mechanized infantry are they're attacking at 4 and defending at 5, right? So that's really, really powerful. The Germans do have something else that they can use where they don't have to develop this technology, but and they're the only ones in the game that can do that. They've got the SS Panzer Grenadiers, and they're mechanized infantry, but even they don't pair 2-to-1. They still pair 1-to-1. So this advanced mechanized isn't as good a weapon for the Germans just because you can use those SS Panzer Grenadiers, but it's still a good one, like I said, because you can do it 2-to-1. But it's not as good as it would be for everybody else in this game, that's for sure. Okay, so what's next here? We've got heavy armor. Now, heavy armor is probably my favorite weapon in this game. It's just, like, I just love big tanks, right? And they're powerful. They're very powerful. Like, your regular tank here, your medium tank, it's got the blitzing ability like I just talked about. And it attacks at 6 and defends at 6. And that's on a 12-sided dice again. But that's the most powerful ground unit, right? But if you go and get this guy, this is a Tiger 1 tank. Then, like if you've built heavy armor here, you've got your roundel all the way to the end on heavy armor. Then you can build one of these. You can only build 1 per turn because they're powerful, right? So the cost on those is going to be +2. Generally, with all the nations, your heavy tanks are going to cost +2 over that. The one difference is with the Germans, the Tiger tank that you buy here is going to be attack 8 and defend 8, whereas most all the other heavy tanks in the game are going to be attack 8 and defend 7. But that's not it with the heavy armor. It also has a target selection of 1, and they can blitz. So like these ones here, the heavy tanks can blitz, and they have an armor selection of 1. So if you manage to roll a 1 when you're attacking or defending, then you get to pick your casualty on the other side. The other guy doesn't just get to lose a dude, you know. Like you say, no, 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 I want that heavy tank over there. Those guys have heavy tanks, and I hit a 1. So I'm taking off the Russian heavy tank. So that's pretty good. But like I said, normally it's 8 and 7, but just with the Tiger tank here is 8 and 8. But then there's another thing that I have here, and that is the King Tiger. And not many people will have this, but if you have there's the America game, this is, what is it? Bring in the Heavies, it's called. The set Bring in the Heavies, and you can get it in this game as well. But all of the America pieces have numbers, like you can get charts and everything. They tell you on the website what you can use the stuff from the America game on this game, the Global War 36. But you have to develop 4 of these first. And like I said, you can only develop 1 per turn. So first you have to develop the technology. Then you have to develop 4 of these, 1 at a time. And then if you want, you can develop the King Tiger. And there's numbers on those as well. But I think they're kind of out of whack because like it costs $12 to buy one of these. But they do attack and defend at a 9, right? So that's pretty darn good. But and they do have the blitzing ability and everything. It's a nice looking piece though, that's for sure. Anyway, heavy armor is probably my favorite one. So what's next? Jet aircraft. So jet aircraft was developed near the end of the war. And let's see here. It allows the nation to build jet fighters as well as nation-specific jets. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So what they do is they have an improved attack and defense ability. So instead of being 6, they will be 8. So here's your regular fighter, right? Like this guy here, he attacks and defends at a 6. And his interception value, what is that? That's a 3, I think, isn't it? Here, let me just check on my chart here. Air units, fighter. Yeah, so their interception value is 3. So like when you're doing a strategic bombing raid, then these guys, when they go in with the bombers, they can escort the bomber and have a 3. Like if the other guy decides to send up fighters against you, then these roll at a 3, the bombers will roll at a 1, right? But if you have jet fighters like this one here, then this one here, this is the out-of-box fighter from America. I think they also sell jet fighters on HBG's website. But this one here, I already had the America game. So this one here is going to be an 8 for attack, an 8 on defense, and a 5 for interception. So you could be knocking down people's fighters left and right while you're going in for bomber raids if you have jet aircraft technology, right? Still going to move 6 spaces. And they're going to cost 15 IPCs. Let me just see something here though. You know what? There's something weird here though. Like on this thing here, it says that the jet aircraft cost 12. So I'm wondering if that's just Germany specific, because in the rules it says that jet aircraft cost 15. So that's kind of weird. So I wonder if that's just Germany specific. You know what? I'm going to ask Doug about that. So the other thing is, I was mentioning that there's nation specific ones too, like this baby right here. Looks like a stealth fighter. I seen a documentary a few months back, and they found one of these things in a barn. It's made out of wood because like they wanted it to be able to get by the radar, and so they were making it out of wood and everything. But it never seen the light of day. Like Germany was already on their back heels by then, and by the time they started developing it. But anyway, that doesn't mean that, like this game here is an invitation for us to refight the war. So if you wanted to allocate, you know, early to jet aircraft, then you can purchase these as well, but only as the German player. And it would have different numbers than this one, right? It'll probably be slightly better numbers. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just saying, like, once you've developed jet aircraft technology, then you can go down that road if you're the German player. And there's all kinds of little things like this, and things that'll come out later that you know, they'll come out with a line of fighters for the Americans or something, that when you develop jet aircraft technology. So that's pretty cool. So what's next? What do we got here? Heavy bombers. Now heavy bombers are pretty devastating, and that's why they're 9, 9, 9, and 9, right? The one thing about heavy bombers is like, they're not necessarily good for somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, right? Because you're probably going to want some fighters to go along with that, because with heavy bombers, what they do in, they're strategic bombers is what they're talking about, but they're strategic bombers with better numbers, right? So if you manage to develop heavy bomber technology, then your payload is going to be a lot more. Your payload with a normal strategic bomber like this one for the Germans, and that's your typical bomber from Axis and Allies out of box. So I'm using this for a strategic bomber. So he's going to roll 2d6 when you go in on a strategic bombing rig. So you've got two 6-sided dice and you roll them, and that's the number of money that you take off or damage that you do to somebody's facility, right? But if you're using one of these, this is from the America game again, this is going to do 3d6 worth of damage, right? And then also carpet bombing. I've showed you carpet bombing in the past. With one of these, you're going to use 3 dice when you go into carpet bomb somebody, and you roll 3 at 2. And there's no defense against that except for anti-aircraft artillery. Like the facilities aren't going to shoot back. The tanks, the dudes, like you're just going into a territory. If it's got no anti-aircraft artillery, you're just going over top of a territory and rolling dice at them, right? Only 1 round though, you only get 1 round, so it's like they're flying over and they drop bombs on them and they keep going, right? So these guys they're going to roll 3 dice at 2. These heavy strategic bombers, they're going to roll 5 dice at 2. So that's pretty good. And also, their interception value is better. Like these interception value for these is a 1. The interception value for these is a 2. So when you are going in on your bombing raids, your strategic bombing raids, and they decide to send up fighters against you, instead of rolling a 1 for the bomber, you're going to roll a 2. So that's pretty darn good. If you can get a mitt full of these things, you know, later in the game, and you're just teeing off on factories, right? The other guy is going to be spending all his money paying down the damage every turn. He's not going to be able to buy units, and it's going to shorten the game big time, right? And that's what they did. You know, when they started building big bombers, the Americans and the British, they just basically turned Germany into rubble, while the Russians were doing a number on them in the east. So the next one is long-range aircraft, and most of us that have played in the past, Axis and Allies, will be familiar with long-range aircraft. It's slightly different in this game though, in that it increases the aircraft by 1, like all of them that you're used to. So a fighter, instead of going 4, it's going to go 5. And you know, like your jet aircraft that I just showed you, it goes 4, so now it's going to go 5. But the only other thing is the strategic bombers. It's going to increase them by 2. So like whether it's a regular strategic bomber or a heavy one, this guy is now going to go 8 instead of 6. These guys are only going to increase by 1. These guys are going to increase by 2. And the other thing is your medium bombers, and I didn't bring one out here to show you, but they're the other bomber that you can use. Not the tactical bomber, but the medium bomber. It's going to increase the combat air patrol range by 1 on those. And so that helps out too in your fight against submarines and the convoy raiding that they do. Okay, what's next? Advanced submarines. Speak of the devil. So advanced submarines, now that's something that the Germans would like to have, because, and the Japanese, like the Axis have much better opportunity to raid convoys in this game, because most of the convoy lines in this game are for the Allies. And the reason for that is because, you know, like America, are across the ocean from where the fight is. I mentioned that earlier about the continent of Eurasia. Germany and Japan are already next to it or on it, right? And the same with Italy. Whereas America's got to get across there. And then you've got the Commonwealth. They have colonies all over, both them and France. The UK and France, they have colonies all over the world, and so they had longer convoy lines, right? And more convoy lines. Like their stuff, they had to go transport it over vast distances. And so you'll find that most of the convoy lines on the board belong to the Allies. There's some for Russia, not many, but some. And there's some for Japan and some for Germany, but most of them for the Allies. So that's why advanced submarines are even better for the Japanese and the Germans. So what happens with those is that they have a +4 on the convoy rating roll. Normally it's a +2, and we haven't gotten into convoy rating, so I'm not going to explain it here because that would just make this video go on forever, and we're specifically talking about the technology. But suffice it to say that it's going to double the ability of your submarines. So here's a regular sub, and I'm just using the regular sub from Europe 1940, and then contrast that with, this is a super sub from historical board gaming. So I'm using that for the Germans. With the other nations, what I was doing, in case they were to develop super subs, I'm using subs for the Allies from the 1941 game. Even though they're not more impressive or anything, it's just that they're different sculpts than the ones from the 40 games. And so the 40 games I'm just using as regular subs, and the 1941 games I'm using as super subs because there's just no options out there for them when you're looking around for super subs. None that are inexpensive anyway. Whereas those ones from the 1941 game, I think they're like 10 cents each or something. Not much more than that. Maybe they're 15, I don't know. But they're pretty darn cheap. So aside from having that +4 convoy rating roll, an advanced submarine can only be attacked during the attacker's combat phase by an aircraft on combat air patrol. An advanced submarine defends normally. Advanced submarines retain all other abilities of regular submarines. So when we get into the convoy rating, all that will make more sense to you. And when we talk more about subs. But yeah, we have talked about them a bit, but I purposely didn't talk too much about them because that would lead into a really long conversation. Subs are really complicated in this game. Anyway, instead of being 3 and 3 for advanced submarines, like normally the numbers on those are attack 3 and defend 3, right? And they move 3 and they cost, the Germans, they cost 5. Like some nations, they cost 6. You'll find that, and that's why you have your nation-specific cards, right? Is that there's different costs for different countries depending on how well they were at building those weapons during the war. So yeah, they're going to cost 7 for the to build an advanced submarine. Yeah, so the Germans are yeah, they're going to cost 7. Anyway, so that's advanced submarines, and then you've got advanced anti-sub warfare. And I haven't had much experience with this yet because I didn't develop it in the one game that I played. I'm still learning this game, right? But this sounds like a pretty darn good weapon too, if the other guys were to build super subs, or if they were just using a lot of subs. Like if Germany just decided, I'm going to buy, you know, like 10, 15 subs, and they were just destroying your money, then this would be a good one to get if you were the British or the Americans, right? To try to counter that. So what it is, it represents a host of improvements to naval vessels, aircraft, and merchantmen to both detect and destroy submarines. So your escorting ships are going to gain a +1 to their opposed convoy rating roll. And in addition, convoys, abstractly represented by the convoy lines, automatically defend against each rating submarine, even without escorts on a roll of 1 or 2. All transports are going to defend at a 1, causing any hit to attacking submarines. So not only is it going to be good against convoy rating, but your transports in the game are now going to defend it at 1. And but that's only against submarines, right? So we're used to having transports that don't defend anymore for the last 20 or 30 years. But now all of a sudden your subs or your transports will at least get to defend against submarines anyway. So that's your anti-submarine warfare. Next thing I believe is strategic rockets. And like I said earlier, I don't know why this one costs so much. So this is what I'm using for the rockets right here. Now this is basically for strategic bombing. But the thing that I don't like about it is, so it's hard to develop to begin with because it costs $9 all the way along there. Or, I mean, you have to roll 9. So it's hard to roll 4 9s in the game. Germany's got a leg up because they've got the first one. It's still going to be hard to roll 3 9s. So let's say you did it in say 4 rolls or 5 rolls. So that's $8 or $10 right there to get it that far. And then you have to build yourself a launch pad. That's another 8 IPCs. Or IPP, sorry. So the rocket facilities, and they can be strategically bombed, and they have their own inherent AA, just like a factory does. And it can be built anywhere that is in a supply path and must be in a supply path to fire. So if somebody cuts off your supply path, then you can't fire it, right? Okay, so it takes 1 turn to build. And it costs 8. Okay, I've been over that. And only one of them can be built per land zone. So rocket launching facilities can fire 1 rocket per turn with a range of 2. They may not be captured. A rocket does 1d6 strategic damages to a facility and cannot be intercepted or shot down. So that's the cool thing about rockets, is that there's no defense against them, right? So you just basically roll a dice, you know, like if you've got it close enough. And now also it can make a carpet bombing roll against a group of units by rolling 1 dice at 1. So that's, you know, that's not too good because you're rolling 12-sided dice and you get, you know, like it's just if you can't reach a factory or something, then you can still roll a dice and try to hit a 2 on a 12-sided dice. That's not easy to do. But let me just show you here why I don't like it so much. And it's because of the range. Like if it had a range of 3, then sure, you know, that would be a good weapon for some nations. But look at here, like so Germany's going to have to take something on the coast here to begin with, right? Let's say they take the Netherlands, then they can build 1 here, they can build 1 here, they can build 1 here, and then they're bombing London with them, right? But that's like they have to be right next to somebody basically to do that. Like the range of 2. You're paying $8 to get them, $8, and then, you know, like you'll get your money back eventually, but it's going to be late in the game by the time you get them anyway. But if it was 3, then you could be putting them back a little ways and closer. So that, to me, that would make more sense. You know, I suppose they did it because that was the range of them, right? They had to be close in order to use them, and they weren't that accurate. But, you know, like it's, you're not going to build some back here like Germany gets up here because you only go 2 spaces again. Like, you know, you can't even reach Moscow from here. You basically have to be here with a rocket in order to reach Moscow. So that's why I don't like these very much. And of course the Americans, I mean, forget it, right? I mean, they're way too far away to build rockets and to use them. You know, like it's one thing if it was free technology, but the fact that you have to develop it first, you have to pay money for dice to move it along, and then, you know, eventually you get strategic rockets. I'm not a big fan of that weapon, right? But then again, you know, look, it wasn't a great technology during the war. It wasn't very accurate. The Germans, they had no idea when they shot these things off where they were going to land, and so the British, they were just dicking with them. Like the Germans would put out fake stories. Yeah, they landed right in London. None of them were landing in London. They were all landing before they got to London, but they just they kept doing stories in the newspapers and stuff and on the radio that they were hitting London, so the Germans wouldn't adjust them. It was kind of funny, but well, not really funny if you got hit by one. But anyway, they really didn't do a lot of damage during the war either. I don't know why it cost so much to do that. I don't know why it's 9 APCs to do that. Okay, so radar, advanced radar. Now this is only good for nations who are also in close quarters. Like nations here in Europe, the radar would work pretty good. You know, I developed it for accidentally, but for France in the last game, because I do something where everybody gets a free weapon, and France happened to get that one, which was no good because France lost their factory, and you know, they didn't need any radar, right? You know, they were down there. That was their homeland down there, that red space, and nobody wanted to bomb that, right? So that wasn't going to do them any good. But anyway, what happens with radar is, and I do have radar sculpts. Yeah, I don't want. Let me just think about where I put them. I think I know where they are. And they're the sculpts that you can get from historical board gaming. They're actually pretty nice. Let me just grab one here. So I got two different kinds. One of them was a German one, and one of them was a British one. And they do give you chips. Like you can buy little chips, and it says radar on it. But it's like this is the German one. I kind of like these 3D pieces. This is the British one here. So you can get these, and they're not that expensive. And you don't need many of them because, you know, like not everybody's going to develop radar, right? Like I said, well, you know, what good is radar going to do Anzac? Nobody's going to strategic bomb them. Like you need a plane that's close enough, and then they don't have enough money to want to bomb anyway, right? So anyway, advanced radar. Be great for the British though. Radar provides a bonus for opposed dice rolls against convoy raiding, so that's one thing that helps. Radar isn't just one thing in this game, it's a few things, right? So it allows nations to build a land-based radar facility using the radar marker, and that's what these would be, as a radar marker. Such a marker may be placed in the land zone or on the border of a sea zone. Such a marker on the sea border zone allows an unlimited aircraft scramble into an adjacent sea zone, and such a marker in a land zone adds +1 to the interception value of fighters. So basically what these are doing is giving you early warning that somebody's coming in, so it allows you to scramble more fighters into a fight, whether that's scrambling them into the sea zone or scrambling them up against a strategic bombing raid, right? But what I don't like about that though is why should you have to have two of them? You know what I mean? Like say the British was going to develop them. Like it's what they're saying is you have to have it on the border here if you want that ability to scramble fighters. Like say you want to protect your navy, so you're going to put one out here. So that's going to cost you money. It costs you $8. And then if you want one for the strategic bombing, well, here, sorry, you can't see that. So yeah, like you want to protect your navy, so you're putting one over there so that you can scramble as many fighters as you want into there instead of just 3. And the other one you can put is in here, so that helps your fighters intercept. Like it adds +1 to their interception value. But I think it would be good enough, and I think I'm going to house rule it, where if you put one in here, then that's good for both. You can scramble into a sea zone, and you can do the interception value +1. I think that's reasonable. Like if you have radar technology, you have radar technology, right? And you've spent money, and you've actually built infrastructure for radar, so why not? Okay, so it can be strategically bombed, and there's a max damage of 5. Let me just have to find where I am here. Okay, yeah, so sorry about this. Okay, so that's basically radar. There was something to do with convoy raiding though. A bonus for opposed dice rolls against convoy raiding. It'll probably say something in the convoy when we do convoys. Anyway, it doesn't specify what that means. But I think it does when you look in convoys. Now that I'm thinking about it, I remember reading about convoys, and I think it says, and if you have radar, add +1 or whatever. So there will be something like that as well. So radar could be good, but not for everybody. It's only good for some people. Now, one that is good for absolutely everybody in this game is wartime economy, and you know, like 7 all the way along there. There's nothing to show you on that. All that means is that you roll 2d6 every turn when it's time to collect your money, and you get that much income. Now you don't add that onto this over here. Like you don't okay, it went up 6 and so you put the Japanese marker up 6 because you've developed version. No, you don't do that. Like their income is 16 and then you roll 2 dice and say you get a 6 on those 2 dice, then that's 22. So you'll take 22 bucks. Like it'll be different every turn, right? So one turn you might only get 3, another turn you might get 12, right? So that would be cool. Anyway, that'll help everybody, and it'll especially help somebody that doesn't have much money, like France, because France is going to get taken out, and then they're going to have real trouble accessing money. Italy doesn't have much money, and so they can't do much, right? But if they all of a sudden were getting, you know, 10 bucks extra a turn, maybe 8 bucks or 10 bucks or something like that, well, now all of a sudden they can do something, right? They can actually do some damage down in Africa or to these guys over here, right? Like they've probably built themselves up or whatever, maybe, and now they're starting to get some money. They can actually buy boats, or they can buy units. They can do more than what they did before. Like with the Americans, you know, like I said, it's great for everybody, but you know, like the Americans, once they're at war and they're getting $70-something, they're maybe not going to notice if they get an extra $8. But Italy's certainly going to notice, and so is France and the FEC and ANZAC. So what happens if the Commonwealth gets it is you're going to roll those 2 dice, and then you're going to divvy it up, and it can be different every turn. Like say you roll 10, okay, with those 2 dice, then you can give all 10 of it to the UK in Europe, or you can give all of it to FEC, or you can give all of it to ANZAC, or you can like 6 of it to ANZAC, 2 to the FEC, 2 to the UK. You can do it any way you want, and you can do it differently every turn. So you roll the dice and you say, okay, you know, like you're thinking you're always thinking a turn ahead in this game, right? So you're thinking, man, if I could just get an extra $6, then I could build this kind of shit for ANZAC, right? So when you go to roll, like say you get a 10 and you needed, so give them the extra 6, and then decide how to divvy up the 4 between the other 2 guys, right? So that's how it works with the Commonwealth. And with everybody else, of course, they just get all that money, right? Whether it's Germany or whoever. Okay, so improve factories. Now this one is also very good. Because factories in this game don't give you as many units as they do in Axis and Allies. If you're used to getting 10 and 3, then you're going to be pretty sad playing this game, because your factories only produce 5 units, the major factories, and the minor factories only produce 1. You're really limited. Like when you're down in the FEC down there and you can only build 1 unit, you know, like that's it's pretty sad. You're only putting 1 unit on per turn. But with improved factories, now your major factories produce 8 units, and your minor factories are going to produce 2. So the minor factories are going to double, and your major factories are going to produce 8. So now all of a sudden your factories are actually worth something, right? Like you buy 2 minor factories, and you have 2 of them in FEC, and that's pretty much all you need, because they don't get that much money, right? So it's not like having capacity to build 10 units is going to do you any good down there, because you don't get enough money to build 10 units, but you could get enough to build 4 of them, right? You certainly get enough to build more than 1 of them, except at the start of the game. Before you go to war, you're really limited on your income down there. And then the last one is improved shipyards. And that is good for most countries, but not all. Like Russia, it's like Russia in all games that you've played, World War II games that you played. Russia's never going to build a big navy, right? They're never going to start building battleships and aircraft carriers and all that stuff. Like I just don't see that ever happening. So they're not. It's not going to help them that much, but it's not going to hurt them either. You know, like it's still going to help them. Like if I was them and I build improved shipyards, like on that roll that I do there, where everybody gets a weapon. If they happen to get that one, then sure, you know, like I'll buy the odd destroyer and the odd sub, and you know. So what happens is all of your ships cost $2 less, and your submarines are going to cost $1 less. When you're doing your ships, and I've showed you this before on your build chart over here. Let's just go over here. So you've got your build chart, how it's going to work. So your ships cost $2 less. Now it's got to come off the first time. Like say this German battleship wasn't here, and you're going to build a battleship, and it costs you, I can't remember. Let's say it costs $5 to 5, 5, 5, and 5 to build this battleship. So what you're going to do is you're going to pay $3 on the first stage, and then 5, 5, and 5. So it always comes off the first stage. It never comes off in the middle. You can't say, okay, I'm gonna, you know, I've got the money now. Maybe I won't have it later, so I'll take the money off the end, right? No, it always comes off when you put the ship on to begin with, and also if somebody takes you over, makes you surrender. I was telling you earlier in the last video there how they get to take over your ships, right? And your stuff. Well, that technology isn't going to help them. None of these are. Like if you take over a country, you don't get their technology. But that ship has already had the discount on it anyway, right? You know, like say you took out Germany, now you get this battleship. That technology has already paid for this anyway. So you're still going to have to pay 5, 5, and 5, or whatever your cost for a battleship is. Like I was saying earlier too, your costs are different for units in this game depending on who you are. Most of them are the same. Most of them are almost identical, but certain things cost different. Like Japanese cost more for tanks, right? And and I was showing you there earlier where the jet fighters, it looks like that it's going to cost the Germans less than it does everybody else. So unless that's a mistake, but I'm going to ask Doug about that. Anyway, that's how you do the technology in this game, the research and technology. And like I said, it's really good. I love how they did it. I think they did an awesome job. It's 100 times better than Axis and Allies. That is for certain. But it wasn't going to be hard to beat that. Like I got my own rules for that game, and I think I did a way better job than they did. Sorry, Larry, but that one sucked. Anyway, this one's great though. I love this. I love the technology chart. I love that you can pick the technology that you're going to try to develop, but that, you know, there's still some chance to it. Like you could try to get heavy armor all game long and keep rolling 3s or 4s or 5s, and come on, you know, like come on, just give me one roll, and you can just keep rolling, and it just doesn't work out for you, right? Or you never know, you could roll 3 in a row, where Germany rolls 3 in a row. All of a sudden they've got heavy armor early in the game. There's one thing about this, the Germans, two things I should mention. One thing I forgot to mention is that you can't start developing this until July of 1939. So basically when World War II starts. You can't start developing weapons in 1936 and 37 and 38. You have to wait till July of 39. Then you can start rolling for weapons. And at the same time, in that July of 39, Germany gets 1 free roll per turn. So they can still buy dice for $2 each, but they get 1 for free. So, you know, like me, I'll just, okay, heavy armor, and I'll roll it. Okay, now what am I going to buy dice for? Because like I said, I love heavy armor for the Germans. And like I said, also, they also get the good heavy armor tank, right? Their heavy armor tank is better than anybody else's. So, you know, like they get a leg up on that. And the Molotov-Ribbentrop pack that we talked about a couple of videos ago between the Germans and the Russians gives the Russians 1 free roll per turn, as long as the pact is in effect. So they will get a free roll at technology as well. And I believe that's all that there is to be said about technology. The rules in this game covering research and technology. So, I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, I'm out of breath. I never took the time to pause there to take a breath. So anyway, I'm going to go upload this now. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.